Okay, so today I want to talk about another Star Wars magazine. So I've talked a lot about official Star Wars magazines in previous videos, like Star Wars Kids and Star Wars Galaxies and Collector and Poster Monthly and Insider, and the list goes on and on. There are really tons of official Star Wars magazines. I've also talked more recently about third-party Star Wars magazines. Role-playing game magazines that nonetheless have Star Wars EU consistent content inside. But here I want to go back to an official Star Wars magazine. And this is one you may have seen before. It's not super hard to find, but this was actually originally published in the UK. And what it's called, funnily enough, is Star Wars featuring Indiana Jones. A couple reasons for that. Of course, Lucasfilm. We talk a lot about Lucasfilm and Star Wars being synonymous, but of course Lucasfilm produced other things too, including Indiana Jones. And Dark Horse had the license to do Indiana Jones comics. This was an opportunity in the early 90s, and the first issue comes out in the fall of 1992. Only runs for 10 issues, unfortunately. But this was an opportunity for Dark Horse basically to package what they were giving us in North America in comic format for UK audiences in sort of a magazine sort of style format. So what they're doing is they're taking, like in this case, the Dark Empire run, along with some Indiana Jones comics, The Fate of Atlantis in this case, and just giving us some serialized sort of comics, right? For those of us who were in the UK at the time who were hungry for Star Wars. So it's pretty neat too. And like a lot of the magazines at the time, you'd get some bonus features, some collector cards. I think there was. I think in one case you might have even gotten patches or something. I kind of forget, but a lot of that stuff's lost at this point, unfortunately. But what was neat is like once Dark Empire was done, then they started moving on to other things too. So they were able to start publishing some of the very early comic strips, like the Archie Goodwin stuff, like Escape from Ord Mantell, and Vader Strikes Again. So really neat. To me, this just takes me back to such a exciting time in the Star Wars Expanded Universe. This early 90s period, sort of the reinvigoration of a lot of the EU. Dark Empire is maybe my favorite comic story from the EU. And I just absolutely love the cover art that Dave Dorman did. And I got to meet Dave Dorman recently and talk to him and just, share my admiration and for his work and just let him know just how important it is to me. It's part of my Star Wars experience, sort of like staring at these covers for, hours on end. I just think they're gorgeous and they really help tell the story. What's really neat, by the way, is that by the end, you can kind of see like the aesthetic of these are the last two issues 8 and 9. And it's what's kind of fun is you'd be kind of hard pressed to know that these are from like 1993. It's just like such a cool throwback to the late 70s, early 80s comic style. It's just a lot of fun. These just in general they're just a time capsule, So really cool. One of the things they started to do too, so they not only were they putting out the Archie Goodwin comics at the time, but you can see things here like Tales of the Jedi. So they were just starting to put out the Dark Horse Tales from the Jedi, and what's really neat about that too is I really loved the way that they were plugging it for readers. It's like learn the history of the Jedi, and again, it's so easy to take for granted now, but at the time, boy, was that a bold decision for Dark Horse to make, right? Like to venture that far back and to really sort of go deep there and just added so much to the lore. Just super exciting. So again, if you're sitting there in the UK without access to North American comics, Dark Horse was there to sort of keep you in the loop, as well as maybe entice you with some Indiana Jones stuff as well. Like I say, this is not super hard to find. You might find it a little challenging to find some of like the cards and kind of like the swag that came along with the magazines at this point. But a lot of the stuff is available. I don't know if you'll easily be able to find it in sort of a 10-volume lot, maybe on eBay or something, but you can pick these up individually pretty easily. And one thing I've noticed too at conventions is like these will often be in people's sort of like long boxes along with other comics and things like that, so you can kind of find them piecemeal. Oftentimes vendors don't know what they've got. It's really funny. Like I've seen this a lot, and I've tried to ask people, hey, how did you acquire this? Did you get this from the UK? What do you know about this? And in most cases, they don't know what to tell me. And they just say, yeah, there's some comics inside, right? But it's so funny. It's one of these really weird things. It's like, who knew that there was a magazine called Star Wars featuring Indiana Jones, right? So really neat time capsule, a lot of fun. Now, look, do you need to get this? Absolutely not. There's really nothing here that you can't necessarily find anywhere else. Like if you've got any of the handful of Dark Empire omnibus collections, you're fine. If you've got any of the like the Marvel Epic, comic strip editions and some of like the Dark Horse omnibuses with some of the early Archie Goodwin stuff, you're fine. And of course, if you've got any of the compilations of the Tales of the Jedi, you're fine. Now, of course, if you're an Indiana Jones fan, in the same way that Star Wars Dark Horse put out those sort of like those white cover omnibuses, for Star Wars content, they did the same thing with Indiana Jones. Now, those are much harder to find, in my experience. They're expensive. So if you're a huge Indiana Jones fan and just want to find a way of diving into some of the comics, well, this actually might be kind of a fun way of going about kind of like testing the waters. But honestly, there's nothing here that you really can't get anywhere else, except for the fact that, hey, it's like, if you're a completist, truly in the sense of wanting everything with Star Wars named on it, well, it's kind of a fun thing to pick up. You're really not going to be too put out to pick all 10 up. It's really not going to cost you too much. So again, if you've got a special hankering for UK early 90s era Star Wars, EU content and just magazines, and if you just love seeing Dave Dorman's artwork, as I do, sort of blown up beyond just sort of like the smaller comic size, then they're a fun thing to pick up. Well, that's really it for today. If you got any questions, let me know anything you'd want about this. I can do another video where I sort of open these up and sort of walk you through what some of the other features are and stuff, because beyond just the comics, there'll be things from time to time. They'll maybe do a review of a book or the role-playing games. Again, it was just kind of a part of the time capsule was about sort of just like them helping you understand just what was available even for EU audiences, right? So it wasn't just these comics. Of course, there was the books and there's announcements about movies and things like that. So anyway, neat stuff. A really good time, a really fun time, a really innocent time, an adventurous time for Star Wars. And I think this magazine just captures it really well. All right, talk to you later.